Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, comics we want to read, and everything in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
Today we're doing the last podcast
The
of
end cap.
the end cap of our Black History Month run, I guess you'd call it. And today we're doing the Hip Hop Family Tree by Ed Piskor. He is a white man, but this book is a lot of history about black history, black music. Very, very good history, and he did a damn good job categorizing everything and telling the story of the origin of the American and African American music, hip hop. And a lot of people say everything cool about our culture is from black people, and at least I don't know. There's at least been 6 genres of music that all came out of America, and they're all from African American heritage. so you got jazz, you got rock and roll, you got blues, you got fusion, you got hip hop, you got all of these, and they all come from the next one too. So it's kind of crazy how jazz happened, and then because of jazz, you have all these other things happen as well. So jazz and blues and rock, those are all tied together, and you get fusion, which is the mix of the two, and then just it's crazy, and then you get funk and stuff too, and that's what leads to hip hop, because you get we're dancing, there's a drum beat, we're gonna break, it's a break in the song, and then you take that drum break and you make it loop, and then you can rap over it or whatever. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
The history of it is just I don't know. I for one, I mean, I knew some of this history. There was a documentary, I think by Ice-T, on Netflix called The History of Hip Hop. I think it was called something like that. And I watched the first one of it, and it was this, but it just wasn't as engaging to me or whatever. It didn't you saw the people talking and stuff, but I don't know, for some reason this really the way it's presented.
Well, because it's drawn in the era as those things are happening, so it kind of it gives it a little bit of that flair, and especially some of the way that some of their colorful language, and then some of the obviously the dress and whatnot, put it in perspective a little more.
Yeah, and I don't know, it was this book is fucking awesome, basically. And instantly I was once I finished this, I was I need to read number 2. And I actually bought this in a physical copy, because we usually read our stuff digitally just to make it easier for us.
Yeah, I will say, because I read mine digitally, and then Matt was like, "Oh, check out, he's got the hardcover edition, and it is gorgeous.
It's treasury size,
even more beautiful in person."
Yeah, it's got gloss spot on the front cover. It's got fucking Grandmaster Flash in both of his outfits or whatever. So it's fucking awesome. And then the paper on the inside, it looks like 70s newsprint, but it's actually really good paper that's just been painted or colored to look
like that,
70 newsprint.
That's awesome.
So it'll hold up and everything. It just looks like an old comic. But yeah, Ed Piskor is kind of he's an indie comics guy. He does a lot of stuff for Fantagraphics. This was a Fantagraphics book. I want to say I saw this on the shelves when I worked at the comic book store and didn't know what it was, and was whatever. I should have fucking bought it. I don't know why I didn't buy the individual issues as they came out. It just didn't I don't know. It wasn't my thing. I wasn't reading indie books at the time. Something like that. I don't know. Probably. I was more into just straight DC back then, and a couple Marvel stuff. But I'm trying to think. The only stuff that was indie that I read was Mouse, or stuff that oh, you should read this. It's college stuff you would read or something, or stuff for school you would read. So yeah, for sure this was one of those books that kind of I missed when it was coming out. Didn't hear anything about it really, and then I started looking into Ed Piskor's stuff, just like his art caught my attention, and now I'm like, oh, I fucking love it. And then he's got his YouTube channel where he breaks down everything. Cartoonist Kayfabe is the name of that, and he breaks down like individual issues with his buddy Jim Rugg, and they're both professionals, and so you get to see like what a professional's eye, looks for in a good comic, which if you're making comics helps you understand how to make comics better, which is, where I'm coming at it from. I'm trying to write my own comic right now. So that's like, oh, that's what you should do if you're writing a good comic or whatever. And then 2, it just, that's how you tell if something's good, if it's a good comic, or at least things you can appreciate art wise and writing wise kind of thing. But yeah, his stuff is unique. And also he went to like the Kubert school, like the Joe Kubert school. So like he's a trained comics artist, like from a school. So like that's cool. Most people like, oh, I just want to draw.
I just draw, yeah. And
yeah. Or at least like there's a group of people that came from that school. Obviously the Kubert kids, Adam and Andy, I believe, who like them from like Wolverine Origin, or Marvel 1602. I think Andy Kubert did that. So like they're just really good art coming out of these schools, obviously, but like he kind of does it from an indie direction though, like what he wants to do. He's not sitting there. I think the only thing he's done for Marvel or any of the big 2 was he did like an X-Men series breakdown that's kind of like this, where it's like the history of X-Men from like issues 1 to 100 to 200, I think. So you get like the Dark Phoenix saga, Extinction, some of those big moments in there and stuff. So
you have to read all of it.
Yeah, you don't have to read all 200 issues or find all of that stuff.
Nice.
You can just pick up his 3 books and you got it, But it's very much like this, where I read the first trade of that, and it's very much like this, where he just tells you the history. He shows you moments. Almost every page is like what I imagine like a month is or something in real time or something. So like one page tells you what was going on with this group's month, and then the next page is the next month with a different group or whatever, and you find out like basically the history. It doesn't say what year this starts. That was my only thing. I was like, I wish he dropped like years in every now and then. So I'm like, oh, it's a new year. And all that was the first year. Then we get like the second year or whatever. So, but he does put the year on the front cover, and it's from 1970s to 1981 is what this book takes place in. So he goes from like the first like funk song that someone took and was like, oh, I'm going to like take this break and then just rap over it or whatever. Or like not even rap, just say like some rhyming scheme over a little piece of it or whatever, So like, and then even kind of talk about the history of it. Like, oh, radio DJs used to do this kind of like scat stuff in the background or whatever. Like, if you like that, then you do-wop, do-whip, tap, or, and it was like, oh, cool. Like, so that's kind of, it comes from there. It comes from like, a lot of, he even like mentioned like, oh, a lot of African, stuff is in like telling stories and like the history that they would, bring with them.
Oh yeah. When he got into that, like the story and the story rap, that was just some of the cooler ones that from that. So
Yeah, so like I don't know, it's just a really unique way of telling this, and very engaging and interesting as well. Like I would give this book to a class, and all these there's 4 volumes of this, so all 4 volumes of this you could do like a whole semester of college on this, like, and just use these books as like the history, like the textbook or whatever. But is very, very good. And we're not going to go through this book like we normally do for all the other books, because this is not like a straight storyline. It's like a bunch of different groups that came out of New York, specifically the Bronx, and they start battling. Like originally a lot of them were gangs. They started battling with like stereo systems and whatnot, and just like, oh, DJs became popular, and then so they would have record players and a lot big speakers, and like you were mentioning they would you liked seeing their creativity and like how they create.
Yeah,
stuff.
I like that it showed that because that's not something that I knew much about. They were like, oh man, he made these speakers out of like milk crates and stuff, and like they enclosed it with like saran or whatever to give it a better sound. And it's like, oh yeah, well check this out. And this one guy had like speakers that he put into like really big
55-gallon drums,
drum cans. And it's like, wait till you hear this, and like just I can imagine the sound bump of that just being that much louder, and it was cool seeing like the the playground fights where it would be like at a playground or a basketball court, and they would have like two DJs on either side of it, and like everybody's dancing or whatnot, but then they have like the little battles back and forth. That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And also like they say it specifically came from like the gangs saying like, hey, we don't want to be violent, so like here's a way to like battle each other without being violent or whatever. I'm like, that's cool. They like on their own. You don't need cops or laws or whatever. You have people saying it's stupid that we're like killing each other or whatever. Let's like figure out how to do this in a constructive way or whatever.
And that's funny. That's really interesting. And I'm going to go a little more on the social justice on this for a second, because seeing that in here was like, oh man, like, because I had heard a little of that as far as like some of the street gangs like kind of bring it into and like battling with music, and then rap battles eventually from that more, and then it's one
dance
of dance battle exactly, break and that's the thing I was gonna say. As time goes on, every time that you see like you throw a lot more like cop strength at that, it just kind of seems like it doesn't like
it just aggravates the situation.
But then like you said, when you go further into it and they're able to work out on their own, like you have the dance battles going further on. I've watched some documentaries. Vice did some really cool ones on like there was some, I think around Atlanta they were doing paintball fights instead of like with real guns, and like they'd show up, have paintball guns, like you guys won this time.
Dang it!
There was
capture the flag.
Yeah, there was like it was really hot summer I think in New York, and they did water gun fights, and like I think like colored water and stuff, and so it's like like if you like you start to realize like, hey, like we're all family, we're all in this together. We may have some differencing of opinions, but like we don't need to kill each other to get over them. And you let people hash it out themselves most of the time,
right?
They're gonna come to a better solution. So I think this is I think it was really poignant that like going back a little further into history, it's that same thing. Like if you learn from those parts of history where something that was bad, like obviously there was we see there were a couple of people that got stabbed or whatever in this, and
but there was mostly like one guy who had a problem.
But it wasn't like the gang aspect of it,
right?
And that's all I'm saying is like it's obviously if you like you give people like the benefit of the doubt and like let people like work together and like
right, you get a whole new genre of music.
Exactly, you get better things from it. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So like basically you get like the main groups they talk about in this book are from like one of the gangs was the Black Spades, and you get this guy named Bambata. I don't remember what his first name was, but his last name was Bambata, and he was like the head of this gang, the Black Spades, and then they ended up becoming the Zulu Nation, which then they were like just a DJ group that would go around and throw parties, but they still had like territory and stuff. I was interested in that. Like they still like maintained their territories.
That's true. Seeing like the DJ like they were talking about like carving out this area of the Bronx.
Yeah, like this is where I play, and if you come over here, there's gonna be a rap battle, like or like not even a rap battle, but like an MC battle, or whatever, So, but like out of that, so like people were like, oh, Boombata's awesome, and like he's doing his thing. Then you get like groups like the Treacherous Three, the Cold Crush Brothers, Funky 4+1, and the Fantastic Five. So they're like the main people they talk about. And then they also talk about Curtis Blow and his friend Russell Simmons. Who that's like the person I knew in all of this. I'm like, I know who Russell Simmons is, obviously. And then the best thing about this was he includes Rick Rubin, and he makes Rick Rubin look like a douchebag in this. It was hilarious. He's like a rich white kid who like makes his parents drive him into like New York to go to CBGB's to see like his favorite punk bands.
I want to
And then,
go.
like-
I'm going to see him now, Mom.
Yeah, you wait outside, like
Yeah, you wait for me the whole
car.
concert.
I don't want to take a train or a bus or someone else's car. You wait outside the whole concert. And so yeah, like that was funny. I thought they had Rick Rubin, and then and yeah, but like Russell Simmons, I mean, he's a guy who like, and they had like, you can see like his little brother, I didn't know was in Run DMC. I didn't know that was the same brother, like, or the same last name. I saw the name was the same, but you get like, oh, that's his little brother that's in Run DMC, or that's like, oh, that's Dr. Dre.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, when it was like this young kid who was listening, he was like, "Hey, Dre, turn that stuff down." I was like, "Oh, is that little Dr. Dre? That's cool."
Yeah, so that was interesting. That like, oh, we can see what Volume 2 is going to be about.
Oh yeah,
because this was like the first round, the older brothers and stuff, and then the second round is going to be the 80s. So you get like, okay, the end of the older brothers and then the little brothers coming up, and then you're gonna get gangster rap with like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and all those people. So, before we go further in this, I forgot to like bring this up earlier. John, what is your history with hip hop?
Oh, history of hip hop.
Yeah,
okay.
what is your exposure? I mean, obviously we've all heard hip hop now and rap and everything. It's in the culture, but like. Growing up, like, did you listen to rap? What was your first rap album? Stuff like that. Like,
no, I'll say that I probably came from a little more, not like sheltered per se, but like very much like, oh, like you should listen to like this stuff. Like here's like it was even a little while before like my parents let me like listen to like actual rock and stuff too.
right.
Like I think I listened to like
You can listen to Creed, but not.
no, but like so. Like I listen to like more like 50s and 60s, right? Like I listen to oldies, as we will call them now.
Nerd.
Yeah. And then I think it was high school really where I really started to get introduced to that more variety of music. Like you introduced me to a lot better rock. I was like you introduced me like Rush, and then when I was in high school,
That's your example of the music I introduced you to. Just Rush.
well, I'm just saying in general, David Bowie and
Right. Just like general rock and roll and
but then in high school I also I started to get into DJing. I always thought that was really cool, and not DJing in the essence of like this,
not in the cool way.
like I'm spinning CDs, is like playing music at like dances and quinceañeras and stuff like that. But from there that's kind of where I started to get a little more of it, because like I had heard of like the Sugar Hill Gang, like Rapper's Delight and Apache
Right.
and all that. More funk, I would say, than the hip hop side of it, because I like George Clinton and some of that stuff. But then as I started DJing, I would play more, obviously, and I started actually playing like high school dances and doing weddings and stuff. I was playing more like current stuff, and then as the would get that, like people would be like, "Hey, can you play this too?" And I'd be like, "What is that?" It's like I'd have to start
some rap song that I've never heard of.
I'd have to start finding these
like,
things.
can you play music we like?
No. That's it. I was playing the music they requested,
I'm joking.
but then people there would be like, "Hey, can you play this?" And I'd be
Right.
like, I mean,
You're like,
I don't
"Can
know.
you play
They
the new Nas
they
jam?"
didn't request that, and I didn't know what it was.
Have
so
you heard the Nelly song that I want to hear? Come on, man.
No, so I mean, I guess that would be what, like early
2000s.
2000s
Yeah.
is when I really started to get that.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
flair.
I specifically remember hearing like in the 90s like gangster rap and being like, I'm not allowed to listen to that.
Yeah,
like, and then I grew up. My dad listened to classic rock, or what is considered now classic rock. So like he listened to the Who and the Kinks and the Beatles and all that stuff. So like that's what I grew up listening to generally, and then he would listen to stuff that's on the edge of this kind of like funk or whatever, where it would be like Jeff Beck, but he'd never be like, I never would either, like go further, like, oh, where did this fusion stuff come from? Oh, I should look into before this or whatever, the other stuff. So I don't know why I never did it. It was just like, oh, this is Jeff Beck. This is what Jeff Beck sounds like, or this is what Frank Zappa sounds like, or whatever. Not like look into their influences or whatever, which I should have done being a musician and stuff. But Didn't think about it at the time. I was just like, oh, I need to learn that Jeff Beck song or whatever. So, but I specifically remember when I was like 11 and 12, like, oh, all my classmates listened to hip hop, and I was the weird kid for not listening to hip hop. And then, so like, that's where I was like, okay, I want to kind of fit in. I remember like, oh, my friend likes the Insane Clown Posse. Okay, I guess that's hip hop or whatever. And then being like, this is weird clown music. I don't know what this is. And then like, and then hearing the Chronic 2000 and the Marshall Mathers LP come out from Eminem, and like both of those being like, these are fucking awesome. Like whatever this is fucking awesome. So I was a fan of those when I was like 13 and around there, you know. Then I went through a bunch of other phases in music and kind of like lost hip hop.
Yeah.
After that, but that was like my first introduction to it, and like specifically gangster rap or like rap from the '90s, from like the late and mid '90s, like Busta Rhymes and stuff.
Yeah,
like that stuff. I'm like, oh, like I dig this stuff, and like I remember listening to that, and like, you know, but
that's probably some of the stuff that I heard like first is like hearing it, and like you said, like, oh, I'm probably not allowed to listen to this.
Yeah,
but I do remember actually, because my mom really liked Aerosmith at the time.
Right, to hear the Run DMC.
Exactly. I remember hearing that, and because she was down with that one too, actually. So I remember hearing that one and being like, oh, this is cool. I like that extra, like,
I just remember that feeling old to me. Like the way that they rap compared to the way that like gangster rap was sounding. I was like, it sounds like way too like, my name is Matt, and I'm here to say, you know, like, yeah, it has like a slower flow.
Yeah,
it's more like rhymes based or whatever. I don't know.
I remember one of the first ones that I heard that was like, we were talking about like they're telling more of a story than just like rapping. I think Slick Rick. Some of his stuff was like, I listened to that, I was like, oh whoa, like this is different rap than I would be.
Right. So speaking of that, so this book, one of the greatest things about it is through this book he references a bunch of the songs that they're writing and everything, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to go back through this book and write down all the names of the songs so I can listen to it, so I get like a better context of everything. And the greatest thing he does in the back of this book, he puts a discography, so you get like every song that was important that he mentioned, and like who it was by, so you can go on Spotify or wherever and just like get all the music and listen to it in a row and go like, okay, this is exactly what he's talking. This is the growth of hip hop.
His bibliography / discography in the back end is amazing.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, like it's so well like.
Yeah, he did so much research and everything.
Yeah,
and then plus like he's
obviously a fan.
So, yeah. So when you look at him, you're like, oh, he's totally like that white kid that listened to hip hop in Philadelphia or whatever, you know, wherever he was. I think he was from Philadelphia. So, yeah. So like, you know, you tell like he's that kid or whatever. So, but yeah. And then one of the things I liked in this book is they compared. He would really compare, or he was trying to get the point across that like this, like not just the music itself, but like the culture of hip hop is like an art form in itself. Like, you get from hip hop and gangs and stuff, you get the tagging, which is like an art form in itself as far as painting and whatnot. It's a different type of painting. And then one of the characters in this is like a guy that gets really famous in like Europe just from doing, you know, they're like, oh, you're the guy that tagged this streetcar or whatever, and like we like your art, come like paint for us on canvas so we can buy it. And he's like, cool, I just sold this painting for $1,000, and before I was like having trouble keeping a job or whatever.
I liked how they showed that comparison. Like, obviously in Europe and whatnot, it's very much like, oh, this is really cool art, and then it had like, not like Dan Rathers or something. It was like, tonight there was another gang tagging on the wall in downtown LA.
Or the way that the juxtaposition of different societies looking at it differently. And that happened with jazz and stuff too in the 50s. Like a lot of like Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie and all those people, they went to Europe because they're like, hey, we can go play at all these places here and we're not treated the same as we are in America. Like if we go tour on South, we can't even eat like in the same place, or we have to wait in the back alley before we can even go on stage or what. Like just shit like that, and you're like Miles fucking Davis. Like,
Yeah.
so like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Let's go to Europe where we get to sit at the tables and drink and like have fun, and all these ladies are like, hey, what's going on? So like just have a good time over in Europe. They treat us way better over there. So I think that's like a common thing, at least with like African Americans getting treated differently in Europe than they do here, at least in history. So
it's America seems to always be one step behind the time on that.
Yeah, or at least just differently because they don't have that history the same as we do.
Yeah, so, that's true.
They did it here and left it. So thanks, guys. But like that was just, it was interesting to see like how he linked the history of, or like not the history, the history and the like culture of it too. Not just, this isn't just about the music. There was also like an art revolution going on with like graffiti, and then there was like the cultural like breaking into, or the culture of hip hop breaking into the mainstream kind of thing, like the way people dressed and the way the way, all that kind of stuff is now it's cool to look like this. Now like now the way you dress, like everybody's buying Yeezys and shit, and everybody, it's the cool way to look now, kind of thing.
I like to show the progression too. It's like we were saying, like having the stuff out on the playgrounds or the basketball courts, and then like people are like, oh, like look, this is really gathering crowds. Like we should get this into a club, and like we could charge people.
Yeah, we could charge people.
Money for it.
One of the interesting things I thought, like considering that, is how reluctant people were to like record it, like put it on vinyl.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, even people in the community were like, nah, that's just what, like hundreds of people go to see them in the crowd, like at a a club or whatever. Why would they want to listen to it like at the radio or at home or whatever? And you're like, they pay to go see it live, just like any other music. Why wouldn't they want to listen to it like on their own? Or whatever? Like make mixtapes of it or something.
Yeah, all the bootlegging.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Early on.
I mean, because it literally is recording a sample of, an actual record that's already out, copyrighted by someone else, and then you're taking the drum beat, which isn't copyrightable. So that's like the interesting thing. If you take the bass line and the drums, the bass line's the only thing copyrightable in that, and even that is kind of, it's not the melody, it's the bass line. So it's questionable whether that's actually copyrightable anyway. So, but I mean, like you can hear it. Ice. Hey, it goes dun 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 dun. That extra dun 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 dun.
It's a completely different song.
Totally different song. But yeah, I mean, that's a little different. But
yeah, I know.
But it's like basically you create your own song just from like a 10-second loop, or and like that's why early hip hop is literally like a 10-second loop looped over and over and over and over and over for 5 minutes or whatever, or longer.
Yeah.
And then it's like every member of the group's going to say their little thing, and that was interesting. And so like basically the history goes, DJs became a thing, and they would like spin their records, and they got known for how many records they have and all that stuff. Then like to keep like everything going while he was switching records, because they didn't have the mixers and everything at the time, they had an MC come in. Yep. The MC would start talking in between like record switching and all that stuff.
Keep people hyped.
Yeah, keep people hyped. Be like, cool. Oh, did you guys like that? Everybody say ho, or like, and they just keep them going, and then everybody at the party or the club or whatever would be like, yeah. And then the record would start the next song or whatever. And so then once they got mixers in, you just had like the fade-ins or whatever between records, so you didn't have to have it. But then we got loops with the breaks, the breaks being the drum beat and the bass line that are like just in the beginning of a song or in like the middle of a song where there's no singing or guitar or whatever. And then you can just rap over that part. So the MCs would take turns if you had multiple MCs, like if you had the was it the Cold Crush or the Furious Five or whatever, like each member would be like, my name is Curtis and I'm here to say whatever the fuck they did.
Yeah.
Like it was interesting to see like their different styles too. Like one group, I can't remember which group it was, they did like I think it was the one like because the Sugar Hill Gang was the one that was actually like made by the record company.
Yeah.
Like they weren't a real crew in the Bronx at the time. Then they came out with this album, and people were like, "Who the fuck is the Sugar Hill Gang? I've never heard of them, and they've never played anywhere here." And then it was like 5 guys that bought, rhymes from somewhere. It was 3 guys. Sorry, 3 guys who bought, like, one of them bought rhymes from another guy that was actually like an MC or whatever. And that guy was like, "Yeah, take them or whatever. I don't give a fuck." And then like he used them on this record. And then it was like, "Wait, you're fucking fake." And they just like made a fake band. It was basically like Milli Vanilli or something, or like, what's the equivalent of that? Like, where like a company makes the band, and then they weren't a band before, like NSYNC or something, where they just take kids, put them in the spots, and it was like the first one of those. And so that was interesting. I thought that like the community had kind of accepted it just because it was like cool or whatever. I guess the overall community didn't know the scene, and the scene didn't like it because they were like, "Oh, you're a bunch of lame people." You're all like, they were talking about like Sagittarius and all that stuff, and it was interesting to see like what their signs are, and like people were making fun of them just for like what they would say in their rhymes and stuff. So when they would battle, they'd say shit like that, and that was interesting. Towards the end, they actually had like full battles like on the page or whatever, where you'd see what each one said, and I thought that was interesting. But it was really, really, really good. And then it was interesting to see like how once people got accepting of making records of this new music, how fast it like blew up. Like Blondie hears it, and now Blondie's like, "This is the new cool sound. I'm gonna fucking have my own." Like Grandmaster Flash is gonna be on this album or whatever with me, and or his like a piece of it's gonna be his group rapping, with him in the background. And the interesting thing was once you had rappers being on the radio, they can't play those records that the DJs were playing. So now the DJs, they used to be like the forefront or like the cool person in the band, and now they can't be on the record because you can't use copyrighted music. So I guess the copyrighted stuff I was talking about happened after the fact. Like that might have been decided because of rap, because of hip hop, because you can't because a lot of people were saying, "Oh, they're just taking, Led Zeppelin or whatever and taking that little sample of John Bonham's drums and rapping over it. Well, we own that." And it's like, no, you don't, or whatever. Or like they made it a new thing now, so it's like technically not the same art form so like I don't know what court battles. I wonder if like Volume 2 is going to have the court battles from all this stuff, which would be interesting. But I'm sure there were copyright battles to be had with all this stuff. So that's why we get the copyright laws now that are like, oh, it's got to be like 30 seconds of the melody, and that's what, or lyrics and that's what is the copyrighted material of a song, kind of thing. But it was interesting to see like, okay, Blondie's gonna have it, and then you get like, I'm assuming that's why Rick Rubin later on in like Volume 2 and 3 are gonna make the Beastie Boys and stuff, because he's gonna be like, he was going to punk bands, and then he's gonna meet the Beastie Boys somewhere, and then they're gonna try to make a rap band or whatever kind of thing. But yeah, and then this left on a weird note, where it said like now people think that like anybody can rap. Like, oh, it's not that hard. You just like it left it where like, oh, we came to the point where like now there's a lot of fakers and a lot of like now it's getting bigger in culture, and now like anybody's like, oh, rap's not that hard. Like because now commercials have like Ronald McDonald rapping in it or whatever kind of thing, or like it's so it's bursting into the culture, and now like celebrities are like, oh, I can do that. My name is my name's John Wayne, and I'm here to say whatever the fuck they said. But yeah, like what I'm trying to think of a 70s or 80s actor.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, like from there, my name's Charles Bronson, and I'm here to say. But yeah, like when you get to that level, then it becomes corny or whatever, right? So now they're gonna evolve, I think, in the second volume to a different style.
When Ronald Reagan is trying to rap,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, yeah, rapping Ronnie Reagan. So yeah,
Featuring Bonzo on
yeah,
on the records.
perfect. Yeah. So yeah, this was like a really really good volume of like history that like read fast. I think it's only like 100 pages or something, so it's not like super long. Also, the art in the back of this was fucking awesome. They had all these pinups that were great. Like,
Oh, yeah.
a bunch of like indie artists, just going through it, like killing it with all these different bands and like groups where they have like cool poses for them and stuff. One of the other things they talk about is how these groups, like with their style, are very much like comic book characters. He's relating them to comics specifically, like, oh, the Wu-Tang Clan symbol is like the Fantastic Four, or Public Enemies is like X-Men kind of thing, and like kind of relating them to comics itself. Like that's why he was into hip hop too, because like, oh, it's kind of like Marvel and DC. You got East Coast and West Coast. You got like all this stuff.
Oh yeah,
like,
I liked he said that like you saw a lot of this, especially was like New York based, and that's kind of
this was all New York. But
yeah.
Later on, we're gonna get West Coast and East Coast, and
but he said like the urban landscaping, you get a lot of that from comics as well. And then the cool thing that really caught me too was like the alter egos, as far as like your whatever, and then your MC name, and your like some of the elaborate like clothes that you put on to get on
like
stage or whatnot. Yeah. So yeah,
it's very very true. Like you're getting into character, just like these characters. You're bigger than life kind of thing. I mean, like Kiss is an example of that too. Like or like Bootsy Collins or something from Funkadelic. Yeah. It's like like they become different people on stage, and then you see them and you're like, oh, they're like nerds or whatever, or like, or they're whatever normal people, but maybe not Bootsy Collins and George Clinton, but they kind of are always already, yeah. But you see like Marilyn Manson in real life or whatever, and you're like, oh, he's just a dorky white guy or whatever, not like he doesn't have his makeup on and his whatever, or same with Gene Simmons. When Kiss took their makeup off,
yeah,
that was it for them, because they looked so cool with the makeup on, and then they just looked like four Jewish guys or whatever. Four old Jewish guys. So
not as popular of a name.
Yeah.
For a band.
True. So yeah, that's pretty much like the book is just this history, and like a really fast, I mean, it definitely goes through everything quick. You're not going to pick everything up in one sitting or whatever of reading this, but it does like give you a good overview of like the culture and like what was going on at the time and why it was important and how it was affecting the world and America at large, and the Bronx itself, like at the time. So, I mean, this book to me, like I said, I'm gonna go buy. I already bought the second volume. I'm gonna go buy all the other three and read, or the other two and read them, because like I want to know what happens when I started listening. I want to see what he says about
what was
all that
going
stuff.
on in the
Yeah. So like, it's gonna be real interesting. But yeah, everybody go check this out. This is definitely worth a read.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, John, what would you give this one?
It was great, man. Like the art was cool. I like that. Again, like he touched on everything that was important, but it wasn't like boring. Like he kept the flow going. There was a lot of good humor and a lot of like taking from obviously those like real events and like kind of giving them that comic feel and that like, oh man, that's cool flair.
Dude, Richard Simmons' lisp. Was it not Richard Simmons?
No.
I'm sorry.
Russell
Simmons.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know his name's not Richard. Richard Simmons is a different person. Russell Simmons' lisp in this, like I think he was trying to like make a dig like at him, because everybody knows Russell Simmons is, I mean, he was like behind all the bands in the 90s, like all the gangster rap guys that were popular on the West Coast. He's like a giant mogul, but also he's kind of I think people think of him as kind of a dick or whatever. So like I think maybe he made him like specifically stand out of everybody else in this, like with a big lisp when you read it, you have to like everything's got a th over where the
Yeah.
s's are and stuff. So sometimes I'd be like, supposedly, like trying to read how he spelled it out and stuff. So that was fun. But yeah. So what would you give this one, John?
I think you give it an 8, man. The art is fantastic. The history behind it and like the way that he like plots it out for you is very smooth, very great connective tissue. So yeah, it was good, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 9.
Oh, nice.
Because I think, especially like for a first volume, the other volumes are only going to be stronger because there's just more stuff to tell. You know, like this is like any story. Like the first one's supposed to be the setup, right? So
yeah,
this is the setup, and I was like fully engaged.
You're right. This is the comic book trope of like, here is how this culture.
This is Spider-Man learning how to use
yeah.
his webs and Uncle Ben and all that shit. That you're like, all right, we know this part. Get to the good stuff or whatever, you know. So like, if this is that part of it, I'm assuming the rest of it's even better.
Even better.
You know? So I'm like, based on that, and like the art is fucking solid. The design of this is fucking amazing. Like, the design of this book should have, I don't know if it won any not Grammys, Eisners, but it definitely should have won Eisners. But I mean, it's a New York Times best-selling series, so that's interesting. But like, I don't see anything about Eisners on this, and definitely this deserves Eisners, I think.
You hear that?
At least the design of the book, but I mean, like, I don't know if he was the one who designed the book. I think he did, because he's basically a graphic designer as well. Like, you know, his style and everything, he designs the covers of stuff. So yeah, this was like, to me, like, the only downside of it, the only reason why it's not like a 10 or whatever, is just because it's history, right? So I'm a fan of history, so when I read this, it was just engaging, and I was like learning something new for the first time, kind of thing. And I was like putting puzzle pieces together, like, oh, that's Dr. Dre, oh, that's fucking Run DMC or whatever. Like, that's, you know, that's that kid, that's that. I know they're the other, like, Volume 2's people or whatever, you know. So that was fun to like put them together while they're reading X-Men in middle school or whatever in this book. And yeah, like, I don't know. This was just like great if you like history and you already don't know the whole history of hip hop, or you're not sure about how exactly it started. This would be like a good read for that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9 just because, like, to me it was like fully engaging. Art's amazing. It's one guy doing everything, so it's probably the best you got for one of those kind of things. So. Yeah. On that note, we're done with Black History Month, but that doesn't mean you guys should stop reading books by people of color or anything. So feel free, look back at our last year's stuff where we did Static and a Kyle Baker book, Nat Turner. Got some other ones in there too. We did some books that were like
Mark
Batman.
Bernardin's.
Yeah, we did Mark Bernardin's book. Genius. We did
Blink,
which is a Batman story by Dwayne McDuffie. We like Dwayne McDuffie a lot.
Dwayne McDuffie a little bit.
He's a good writer. So we covered him twice, I think, in this too. So, but we also did Christopher Priest this month. So check back on those, and then, you know, try something new every now and then, because some like this isn't something you'd find on the shelves in every bookstore. You're gonna have to either look for it or, you know, kind of go out of your way to like try to look for something different. You know, look in the indie section every now and then in your comic book store. So, yeah, I mean, this was great, and yeah, the reason why we did this again, not just because we wanted to, but like last time I had fun reading like Static and stuff, and then they actually put that stuff in print this year. So I'm like, well, now we got to read Icon and stuff. So, and then this month they just released the Milestone Universe number 0. So it's like the introduction comic to all the, I guess, that the ones they're going to do. So they're going to do Static, they're going to do Icon, they're going to do Hardware. I'm not sure if they're going to do Blood Syndicate or not, but they're going to do at least those 3. And that's kind of like setting up, and it's more like it's an updated version. So it's like the police brutality, which is makes sense for nowadays and stuff. So that's like the setup issue for Dakota. So I think that's going to be the big bang that happens kind of thing in Dakota. So we talk about that. in the Icon episode from a couple weeks ago. So yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, check it out. Also check out the Milestone universe that's coming out in DC. At least I'm sure some of them will get. I haven't read any of the Zero issue yet. I bought it though, so I'll probably do a review on that or something if it's awesome. So, but yeah, there's some really good books coming out now because people are trying to like find these kind of stories, and yeah, there's one book I read this week that called Shadow Doctor that I'm like, oh, I'm totally going to do a review of that book. So,
nice.
And it has to do with Black history and just history in general. So it's very cool. But yeah, so on that note, if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email us at Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word, at gmail.com.
And don't forget about our Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube channel for exclusive content. Matt's throwing up some of these new vlogs on some of these fantastic comics that he's checking out in between our weekly reads.
Yeah, so I know John only reads one comic a week for this podcast, but I read 10, 15 issues plus hardcovers and stuff throughout the month. So, yeah, I try to fill you guys in on what I've been reading, compare and contrast what you guys are reading, tell me what I'm missing, let me know, and I'm enjoying it. So check that out on YouTube. And John might
you make it sound like I don't like to actually.
Well, John's a movie guy, all right. John likes the Marvel movies and the DC movies, so maybe John he's thinking about doing a movie series,
like mini movie reviews or something.
Yeah, so if you guys want to hear that, let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
But yeah, he's gonna start posting eventually, and we'll get him on the YouTube. You get to see his face. For now, you're stuck with my face.
Yeah,
so
Matt's ugly mug.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
So, no, he's not.
Oh, don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Click any likes and icon. And then also on Apple Store. We really appreciate
leave reviews.
Leave reviews on Apple.
We're trying to grow people. And
if
you guys like it, the best thing you can do is leave a 5-star review if possible. But leave whatever review you want.
Leave an honest review.
Yeah, but
still with 5 stars.
Yeah, with 5 stars. You could say it sucks, 5 stars.
Yeah, look, you can tell in the comments. You could say this blows. Don't listen to it, but still give us 5 stars.
Yeah, as long as it's 5, we're good. But yeah, and then next week we're gonna read Scott Pilgrim. Yes, that is volume 1 of that. So
Sex Bomb.
Yeah, Sex Bomb. If you've seen the movie from 2007,
that's where my son of Scott Pilgrim is.
No, what is Scott Pilgrim from? The movie was in like 2011, 10.
I think 10 or 11. Yeah.
I don't remember. Anyway, I read all these when they first came out, or the first 5, whatever the first ones were, when it first came out in the mid 2000s. I'm wondering how well they've aged because I think there's some problematic stuff now in them.
Yeah,
it would be interesting. We'll talk about it. There was some controversies and stuff, but for now we're gonna read the first volume of Scott Pilgrim. So if you guys want to check that out and read it with us or have us spoil it, whatever you want to do, we just want you here listening. Your beautiful ears. So, we'll on that note, we'll see you guys next time.
On the next one.
Bye. Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that episode.
If you did and you'd like to follow us on social media, our Facebook is Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and our Instagram is @Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more recommendations to add to your weekly pull list.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.